was helping somebody recently with some of their estate planning and asking them a bunch of different questions about retirement accounts. And I said, hey, you have, I was listing off all the different things. And they said, yeah, I have 403B and I have this other plan. I was like, what's the other plan? I don't know. Well, I have to ask a coworker. I'm like, okay, well, ask the coworker. Here it's a pension that they didn't realize they had. If you have any of these, please, please, please keep records of what they are. Know what they are, because when you get towards retirement years and you're ready to make that jump, it'll be substantially easier than having to try and think about these things and hope the coworker who was around 30 years ago when this plan existed is still around to answer questions for you. So just keep track of all those so that way you can be prepared going into the future.
Yeah, and it's not part of open enrollment technically, but I like to use this time once a year to check all your HR files and beneficiaries.
Welcome to the Child Free Wealth Podcast, hosted by Bri and Dr. J, Certified Financial Planner. Here we discuss life and finances as it relates to being child-free. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please consult your advisor before implementing any ideas heard on this podcast.
Hey, Child Free Wealth listeners, it is September-ish. Why I say ish? Because Bri and I never really know when these come out. We record this, it's August, but it's coming out in September intentionally. And usually somewhere around September, October, you get into open enrollment. And this is when you get a chance to look at your benefits again. So we're going to talk today all about benefits, about open enrollment, about things to watch out for. Now, if your open enrollment period is like in January or some other weird time, save this podcast for the month before that. For everybody else, you're going to want to look at it. And we're going to take it issue by issue and walk through some of the things we see in open enrollment. So what we're going to do is Bri and I are going to take turns on what our favorite thing to look at in open enrollment is. Bri, what's your favorite thing to look at in open enrollment?
Probably insurance. I think insurance is kind of fun to go through and see. I think it's straightforward, but I look at this stuff a lot. It makes it a little bit easier for me, but particularly looking at all the different types of insurance options, because not only do you have your typical like medical, vision, dental, all those things, but then there are also often other insurances that are added on there. And sometimes they can be worth it and sometimes they're not so worth it. So it really just depends on particular situations. One big one that sometimes people will have is long-term care insurance on there. And I've seen that more and more recently, and people not even thinking to elect it. It is something where I would go through, I would look at it and explore what your option is there. And it might be worth it for you to get long-term care insurance through your employer. That is a big one where there are times in which you can get it through employer and not have to go through the medical underwriting. And if you have any sort of medical issue that may prevent you from getting long-term care insurance outside of work coverage, this can be a great option. So that's been my favorite one to look at this year so far.
Yeah, and for long-term care insurance, the one thing to make sure is that it's portable, which means you can take it with you. Most of them are. And some of those plans, like I've seen a few state plans that have been really good. I'm hoping the federal plan comes back later this year, or soon. Long-term care insurance offered by a group or through work is a good one. Let's stick with insurance for a second. When I look at people's open enrollment, kind of the first thing I'm looking to see is, did they check off and enroll in long-term disability? Now, long-term disability is what pays you if you're disabled. And for child-free folks, it's probably the most important on the insurance selections. What happens is your company may pay for long-term disability. If they pay for it, then you have to pay income taxes on it when you claim. If you pay for it, it actually comes to you tax-free. That's cool. But you need to be enrolled in it. And usually it covers 60 or 70% of your salary. Occasionally, they'll have an additional long-term disability plan. And the additional long-term disability is like, oh, well, you're over a cap. Like you got too much income or something like that, or ups it from 60% or 70%. I tend to recommend just take all the long-term disability you can get. That doesn't mean the gimmicky insurance. Now, the flip side, the gimmicky insurance is like, well, I can get a policy that only covers me if I have a specific type of cancer or something, or like if I lose one digit, I get this. There's some weird insurance policies they're trying to sell now that are like, if this one thing happens, I get $25,000 or something like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the long-term disability that covers your income. Now, the short-term disability is also a choice in many of them, but the question is, do you have a fully funded emergency fund? If you got 6 months of your expenses in emergency fund, you may not need the short-term disability, but it depends on how comfortable you're going to be if you lose your job and how cheap it is. Sometimes it's really cheap, you just get it. Like, let's be real.
Wait, hold on. I want to continue on that because I recently got a question from somebody is if you hit your FI number, would we recommend dropping that long-term disability insurance? And my answer was no, because if you become disabled and something happens, you built your FI on a specific number, and that disability may cause medical bills far and above that FI number. I say, no, don't drop that long-term disability insurance, even if you've hit your FI number. Just keep paying for it, because in the long run, if you become disabled, that is going to be such a small amount in comparison to those medical bills.
Yeah, and disability is, I'm trying to think. I don't think I've run into a client ever where I've said, don't get the disability insurance. Because it's kind of a no-brainer. It's just like, hey, you can get disabled for a lot of reasons. About 1/3 of adults sometime in their life will have a disability. It could be medical, could be physical, could be psychological, but all different types of things. You could have gone on a skiing trip and run into a tree, and now next thing you know, you're disabled. And it's important. But let's kind of look at the other side. Bri, what do you think about life insurance?
Life insurance, it can be beneficial in certain situations, not all situations. So if your spouse relies on your income, then it could be beneficial. Most of our child-free clients, it's really not super beneficial. But one case that I think we've run into a few times recently is if your spouse is set to inherit a lump sum and you've built that into your plan, well, we might want to consider life insurance there, because if they're set to inherit something, but if they pass and you get nothing and you've built your financial plan around that, cool. Life insurance is an option then if you depend on them. But if you guys can survive and it's just one of you, if you're in a couple anyway, and you can survive on your own income, then you don't necessarily need life insurance.
For the soloists, if nobody's relying on your income, not a big need for life insurance. People go, well, but how do I pay for somebody to bury me? Well, here's the problem. Life insurance could take you months to get the claim on that. Life insurance is not burial insurance. It doesn't just like you die and the money magically comes to you. It's a process. Now, when it comes to open enrollment, if the company has like the $3 life insurance plan for 1 time or 2 times your salary, cool, go right ahead. Like seriously, for like $3 or $6, and by the way, it literally is like less than $10 in most cases. Awesome, go for it. Beyond that, you got to have a reason to get the life insurance. It's kind of one of those things to think through. Now, I'm going to take one that's kind of one of my pet peeves, and that's health insurance. All right. Now, I am biased because growing up, medical issues hurt us big time. My mother was always sick in one different way or another, and we always had huge medical bills. For me and for my clients, I go get the good health insurance. Now, somebody will argue with me, well, I can get the cheaper health insurance, and then it's a high deductible healthcare plan, and then get an HSA, so I can invest money in my HSA, and I can save money. Yeah, if you're like, I don't know, 35 or younger, in complete health, and you're lucky, maybe you can get away with a cheaper insurance. Now, you'll notice I said, and if you're lucky. Now, that's not a technical term. That is like, just some people are unlucky, and they need the better health insurance. At the end of the year, I've never had somebody go, well, I paid for the expensive health insurance. I didn't use it, so I'm upset. If you didn't use the health insurance, it's because you were healthy for the year. But then you have like 1 ER visit, 1 ambulance ride, 1 admission. All of a sudden, all the money you saved on the cheap insurance is gone. So in general, I'm like, just buy the good health insurance. And I don't know. It's one of those that like financially there might be a case for getting the cheaper one in the HSA, but I'm just not that lucky. Like everything would have to go into place to do that. I mean, Bri, what do you think? I mean, Get the good health insurance, get the crappy health insurance. What are you thinking?
I am team get the good health insurance, and I've had this conversation with clients, and sometimes they're just like, nope, I don't want that. I am not going to the doctor if anything happens. And I'm like, okay, you are aware of the risks with this. We have had conversations about this. Then I'm saying you need to have that money set aside for your deductible in case anything should happen. So just be aware you want to save money there, but make sure you have it set aside in case you do, for some reason, something goes wrong and you end up in the hospital. To me, it's just not worth it. I will spend a little bit extra money every month and have good health insurance. That way, for me, when things are very unlucky and always seem to go wrong medically, it's not a problem.
Yeah, and like literally, I will ask the clients, are you lucky? And that really should not be a real question, but it is. Like some of us just are medically. Some of us aren't. While we're on the medical, dental and vision, So dental insurance, if it's a good plan, covers orthodontics, awesome. Some of the dental insurance are like dental coupons. I swear, like you get a little discount. It's not great coverage. Vision, kind of the same type of thing. You need to figure out how often you're actually going to go get your eyes checked, and are you going to use the contacts, the glasses? If you are, that makes sense. Keep in mind with open enrollment, you can say each year, I want this or I don't. If you've been putting off your teeth for a while, which I've seen some folks like, oh, well, it's been hurting me for 6 months. Guess what? You get the dental insurance. Then people go, well, but the dental insurance only covered like 50% or something like that. Yes, but it at least covered that. It's just like one of those, like, people think dental insurance is going to cover the same way health insurance. It doesn't. And I heard a comedian talking about this. They call dental insurance like accessory bones because they're the weird things that are not covered by health insurance. You're right. Why your eyes and your teeth are not counted under health insurance, I have no friggin' clue. But they're special. That runs us through a lot of insurance. The other insurances, like the gimmicky insurances, pet insurance. Bri, what's your thought on pet insurance?
I've kind of been changing my thing on this recently is if you can find a good pet insurance and you can get it while the pet's young, then I'd probably be more willing to go ahead and look at it. For me, my dog is almost 7 years old. The pet insurance won't cover anything for her, but it really depends on the plan and depends on the age of your pet.
Yeah. If you have any type of pre-existing conditions with your pet, they won't cover any of it. It's either got to be like essentially a puppy, a kitty, and you get the insurance then. Otherwise, forget it. There's also you'll see some weird insurances in there. Sometimes your employer will offer a discount on auto insurance. Take a look at it, see what the price is. They've got kind of like just random insurance. You don't need to buy the random insurance just because they offer it. I've had some folks, when they do the open enrollment, they just check all the boxes. The hospital indemnity, the cancer, all those. I'm like, you're gambling that you have this one problem, probably not worth it. I did see one recently, really interesting. They had a pretty good identity theft coverage. That was that one, at least I get, like, I understand that. But there's like a lot of the, just to throw the name on it, AFLAC policies are like, if this specific thing happens, you get that coverage. Those to me are gambling. I don't really tend to select those. Bri, you were going to add on something?
Yeah. Fun fact about me is actually in college, I was going to go take a insurance test and work for AFLAC, but then I had a medical condition and was not able to make the test. Didn't do that, but a little fact that you never knew about me.
I did not.
Yeah. No. Yeah, that was years ago. But what I was going to say is, while we're talking about all these, if, we still got a couple months left in the year, and if you've clicked all those insurances when you signed up last time and you have a legal benefit and you have not done your will, power of attorney, anything like that yet, or it's been a while, I would go ahead and see about getting those done, wrapped up before the end of the year and taking advantage of that because you're already paying for it. Reaching out to your HR saying, how do I do this? How do I get this benefit? And you can talk to a lawyer and get all those things set up.
Yeah. And while we're talking about the end of the year stuff, if you have an FSA account, flexible spending account, don't forget to spend it. I'm not a huge fan of using those because most people put too much in it and end up losing the money. HSA, you can invest, keep for longer. Awesome. Only if your insurance allows it. FSA, where FSAs work is if you know you're going to have expenses next year. You're like, oh, I'm going to get this surgery done. I know I got $2,000 out of pocket. Cool, use the FSA. You have to
HRA
guarantee
too.
it. Yep.
Yeah. HRA
A
is
lot of
also,
those types of plans, use it or lose it, becomes an issue.
yeah. So user up.
Yep. That's a lot of the insurances. If you have other weird ones, well, the weirder they are, the less likely I am to go with it. The other one is, by the way, if they have like a partnership with like MetLife or Northwestern Mutual and somebody calls you to sell you insurance, chances are you don't need it. Like, it's kind of one of those warnings. So then we go into other things in the open enrollment. One of the things to check here, by the way, is you're going to want to check all of your HR stuff at the same time. Like your withholding. Did you change states? Are your taxes set up right? But also your 401k or your retirement accounts. Bri, kind of what's your guidelines on how do they make decisions on 401ks?
Yeah. So 401k, if you are out of debt, you got your emergency fund set up and it goes with your goal, you can go ahead and max that out. It's a great way to do that. There is Roth and traditional. And big thing here is people often get confused about the income limits. Those only apply to Roth IRAs. They do not apply to Roth 401ks. So you can still put money into a Roth 401k, set that money aside now, pay the taxes now, and then not have to worry about those taxes in the future. And that can be really great, especially if you are in a no income tax state, especially you plan to stay there. If you're in a high tax state and you don't plan to stay there forever, then there might be a conversation of let's go with traditional and lower those taxes. That's where we kind of need to talk with a person to figure out what the best tax option is. But if you're trying to just put money aside, I'd rather you get the money set aside versus get so hung up in should I do Roth or should I do traditional? And then going through looking at those options, a lot of places will have target date funds and the fees are slightly higher than what you could do on your own, but the tax benefits come with them and they're usually simple. There are so many different options when it comes to investing in 401ks, depending on who your employers are. Like for our 401k, we have a lot of good options. And we're a financial company, so we decided, we kind of picked the 401k provider based off the ability to get the options that we wanted in there. Other ones, like my wife's, she's got, I think, 10 different options, and 7 of those are target date funds. And then the other ones are just some really high fee, oddball ones. So it really, really depends on your employer. If you can do the whole world minus CUS, US, some bonds, that's a good option. If you can't do that, target date funds can be a good option as well. So it's very dependent.
Yeah, I had somebody the other day ask me, they said, our 401k has terrible options and they all charge like a 1% fee or more. Should I just put my money in a brokerage? And I said, I hate those fees. I hate the fund structure, but you're getting the tax benefit. You kind of have to just hold your nose and kind of do it. You can't change the funds, but your employer can. Sometimes you can talk to them and say like, hey, come on, this sucks. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't listen to you. The other one is if you're in a nonprofit, you may have a 403B as an option. 403Bs, 401ks, they work very similarly. Some different things on the catch up when you're over 50 and some things you can do with a 403B. But if you have a 403B, I want you to see if they also have what's called a 457B, which is a deferred compensation program. Those are often go together. In a deferred compensation program, you essentially take part of your paycheck, put it aside, kind of like what a 401k works, but the difference is you get access to it when you leave the job rather than when you're 59 and a half. A deferred compensation program is interesting enough. We've had quite a few clients lately who are like, check and see. And they're like, oh, I never knew that this existed. You can max out a 403B and a 457B, both with a whole bunch of money, and it can impact your taxes positively. If you are an executive or higher level person in the company, you may also have a deferred compensation program there. Now, one little caveat on the traditional versus Roth. If you are in a a student, if you're paying off your student loans and you're in an income-driven repayment program or SAVE plan or something like that, you may want to be maxing out your traditional 401k or 403b or 457b because that brings down your total income for the year and changes your student loan amount. There's some silly tricks like that that work. And some companies only allow you to make changes during open enrollment. Some allow it throughout the year. While we're talking about money and open enrollment, another opportunity that comes usually around this time is you may have an opportunity for what's called an ESPP, an employee stock purchase plan. Tends to be for publicly traded companies. What these do is the normal, and I say normal because they can all be slightly different, is you can buy the stock twice a year and you get the better price of either when you enroll in it or when you buy the stock. And you get a 15% discount. Essentially, let's say I got a January start and that comes out through July 1st. Whatever the stock price was lower, January or July, I get the lower price and I get 15% off. Now, do the math on that. Essentially means you get to make 15% on your money for 6 months. If you got the extra cash, awesome. General rule is the day you buy the stock, you sell it. That way you just take the money and run. ESPP is one of those, there's probably a limit based on the company. If you've already paid off your debt and you're saving money, good one to get some free money, essentially. It's 15% free. Now you got to pay tax on it, of course, but it works. Bri, what else is on your open enrollment list?
One thing to know is if your benefits are changing too. If there's anything back to the health insurance, I just thought about this, is if their health insurance is changing, they're going to be going away from, like we had this recently with my wife's employers. They have a really good health insurance plan. We're on that really good health insurance plan, and now it's going away. And if you weren't on that, you have 1 more year to sign up for it. If you're not on it then, you don't get access to it afterwards. So at any point, just be aware of what changes might be coming up. So maybe you want to get into a better plan now so you can stay in there in the future. Was helping somebody recently with some of their estate planning and asking them a bunch of different questions about retirement accounts. And I said, hey, you have, I was listing off all the different things. And they said, yeah, I have 403B and I have this other plan. I was like, what's the other plan? I don't know. Well, I have to ask a coworker. I'm like, okay, well, ask the coworker. Here it's a pension that they didn't realize they had. If you have any of these, please, please, please keep records of what they are. Know what they are, because when you get towards retirement years and you're ready to make that jump, it'll be substantially easier than having to try and think about these things and hope the coworker who was around 30 years ago when this plan existed is still around to answer questions for you. So just keep track of all those so that way you can be prepared going into the future.
Yeah, and it's not part of open enrollment technically, but I like to use this time once a year to check all your HR files and beneficiaries. Your name, your address, who your beneficiaries are. My wife, I went to move one of her accounts, and it had her maiden name from 15 years ago. I'm like, where the hell did that come from? And the answer was somewhere in the HR system. It becomes an issue. And if you don't have beneficiaries, it's time to update those. The worst I've seen there, I had somebody whose ex-wife was still on their pension. He passed away and she got everything. This is a problem. Once a year, go check it. And people go, well, but I already know it's right. I don't care. You still look at it because sometimes the HR system pushes something that's old information into it. And you're like, oh, that's how that happens. Yes, HR is also going to ask to make sure your dependents are appropriate. They might ask for paperwork on that. If you have a spouse, what I want you to do is compare your benefits with theirs and see if there's a win-win somewhere. Every once in a while, hey, if I put my spouse on my health insurance, they can not take it on theirs and get $400 back or something like that. Some cash for not taking the health insurance. That's common. You'll also find other times where places have kind of almost like a penalty for having your spouse on the insurance, where if they have insurance elsewhere, they double the price or something crazy like that. The other one on the health insurance is take a look and see what they have for the healthy options, they call them, if you get your physicals done and if you get your mammograms, then they give you a discount. Be sure to take advantage of those. And since it's the end of the year, if you've maxed out your health insurance, you maxed out your deductible, maxed out your out of pocket, Get everything else done this year that you need to get done. Okay? It's free healthcare for the rest of the year. Just get it done. You got that knee that you've needed that surgery for way too long. You put it off. Go get the knee done. Like if you actually at hospitals, the number of surgeries that are elective go up through the roof at the last couple of months because they're like, well, I've already finished up my deductible, so I might as well do that. Completely resets when the year restarts. Now, every year, I want you to look at the benefits. Unfortunately, most companies, they get worse every year. Like, the health insurance gets more expensive, other things. The other one I want you to look at is most companies are now offering what they call a perks package or a discount package. Like whatever. It's like 10% off this and 15% off that. I had one that was 15% off my cell phone plan. All you got to do is put your email address in the cell phone and you get the discount. There's all different weird things like that. They're trying to make those so like it makes it attractive. They're just coupons, but at least take a look and see what happens. If you have trouble looking through your open enrollment, you can always reach out to us. We will help you as best we can. Keep in mind, there is a time limit there, so we need to actually have time to look at things and walk it through. But each year you get the opportunity to kind of rethink your answers, and you should. All the time I look at people's paychecks and I'm like, why are you paying this? And they're like, well, that was an option. One of my favorite ones is like, I pay an extra $5 a paycheck so I can wear jeans on Friday. That's an old school one that still exists. I'm like,
Yo.
Okay, come on. Like, there's all different weird plans, but you can figure out how to do that. The one last one I thought of for open enrollment, occasionally, not so much now, some places will allow you to cash out your PTO or your time off and take that across the year. That's up to you to make that choice. I kind of prefer you take the vacation, but you want the cash too. That works. So if you need help, feel free to reach out to us. Also, shameless plug, do talk about open enrollment and benefits in the new book, The Child-Free Guide to Life and Money, coming out at the end of the year, available for pre-sale now.
If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a rating or review. We'd love to keep the conversation going. Please let us know your thoughts wherever comments are available or email us at media@childfreewealth.com. To stay up to date, find and follow Child Free Wealth on social media. If you're interested in working with us, learn more by visiting our website, childfreewealth.com. We'll see you next time.